You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. You've seen them on websites, and whether you choose to use them or not, chatbots are here to stay for the foreseeable future. On the good side, they can simplify your life, improve efficiency, and filter out your best prospects for membership. On the other hand, chat can feel cold and impersonal. And yet, we're learning how to use them and get what we want without having to wait. So what's the secret? Evan Dean from HubSpot joins us again to walk through all you need to know about chat and how you can take the bot out of chatbots. Okay, so here's a question for you, and don't lie. Do you use chatbots when you're on a website, or would you prefer to avoid them like the plague? Have you ever had a good chatbot experience? And before we go any further, do you know what I'm talking about when we talk about chatbots? There's the little box in the lower right-hand corner usually that has an emoji, like there's somebody there ready to talk to you and answer your questions. You know, we sometimes think of it as the website genie. That's what I'm talking about. In the marketing world, you'll often hear this experience referred to as conversational marketing. And we get the fact that it can feel cold and insincere, but when it's done the right way, these things can answer questions quickly and ultimately remove workload from your team and improve efficiency. So in this episode, we're joined by Evan Dean, once again from HubSpot. And this time, Evan's going to help us better understand chatbots and really how to get the most out of them. Evan, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, Ed. Thanks for having me.
What's happening out in Boston?
Oh, the weather has finally turned warm, and people are going nuts here in Boston. We're out of hibernation.
Is that nice? So unless you're listening to this at a time where you are back in hibernation, just remember at one point, it was actually summer somewhere. So yep. That's awesome. Hey, I appreciate you joining us. And you've been a guest of Crushing Club Marketing in the past. But for those who are not familiar with you or who are not familiar with HubSpot, how about the elevator pitch on who HubSpot is?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm a consultant from HubSpot. HubSpot is a digital marketing software platform. And really what that means is there's all these tools that we use online, to run analytics, to allow our contacts to convert, to manage social media, to send email marketing. And there's all kinds of different great tools that you can use for doing that stuff. HubSpot is another set of those tools. But really the value that HubSpot brings to the marketplace is it's all in one. So those things work together. They speak to each other. Your emails are better because your marketing database is connected to your emails and so on.
Got it. Totally integrated. And that is the all-in-one component that makes it so valuable.
Heck yeah.
Full disclosure, we are HubSpot partners and have been HubSpot partners since 2011. So there is a connection there. You might as well just get that out on the table from the top.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, that's right. So today we're going to talk about conversational marketing, which is a term when someone, I've always thought of it as like chat on websites, right? But when you think of conversational marketing, and for our listeners, how would you describe conversational marketing?
Well, I think that's a big part of it. When people are talking about conversational marketing, they're absolutely referencing like a digital ecosystem where chat is one of the big parts of it. But I think it has a lot more than just chat as a component. So what it's really about is handling the sort of interactions that you may have with a client quickly and effectively, and really trying to break down those roadblocks that we sometimes have with communicating with our clients. And that may include making sure that the content that they're looking for online is easily found. Sure, making sure that a chat is there when appropriate or when we're able to support it. But then also using things like chat bots, which are really usually just forms that have more of a natural flow to them. And then other tools on the back end to say, hey, that chat resulted in a ticket, or that has a task which we need to follow up on. Let's make sure that that gets routed to the team well, and we have a nice fluid interaction with our clients.
So before we leave everyone in the dust here, let's just get some terminology and context for them. Yeah. And you may be, if you're listening, you may be familiar with some of this. So if you've ever gone to a website where you look at a page, or maybe, you scroll down a little bit and that little thing comes up in the lower right-hand corner, or maybe you see someone's face and says, how can I help you? Or is there something you're looking for? Or something like that. That's the chat functionality, at least that I was thinking of in the beginning. Is there another term that we would use that would help people
Yeah, I think that's it's a new technology. So in the way there's always kind of the competition for what we're going to call this thing and what the official name is. I don't know if we're there yet. It feels like live chat or chat is really what people are talking about. Of course, you'll see it as messaging or as a live message tool. Really, it's just the idea that there is this kind of AIM or like a Slack type of tool, like a text that you're having with someone who's representing the website that you're on.
Got it. So let's keep on that path, because some of you might be listening right now saying, I hate that, or I don't like it when that happens. Or you might, it's like that retail environment where you start looking around and you're like, now where's that little chat thing? You know, I've got a question for these people. How would you say that the perception, I guess, and perspective of chat and chat functionality is evolving, you know, from that like, ooh, what is this? This is creepy, to people are actually using it now?
Well, yeah, I think it's probably a generational thing, first and foremost. There's always going to be those kind of like the old school mentality of, I just want to get on the phone and I want to speak with someone. There's always that, and I think a healthy balance is going to be that you should always have a phone available on your website as well. But for a lot of us, especially like more and more every day, we're more comfortable having a conversation with someone via text, right? You know, we're texting one another more and more often. And even those of us, and I think I put myself in this category, are often more comfortable having an actual phone call with someone, have started to shift more where we're comfortable having what is a personal conversation via a texting tool, whether that be chat or an office kind of interpersonal communication tool, or just, you know, texting with your friends and family on your phone.
Right. It's sort of funny because you talk about the comfort that people have in texting. We think about how we communicate with people, how often we sit there and we prefer to send a text message rather than pick up the phone and call, right? I mean, so yeah, so that idea of being online and texting and instant messaging someone in that moment is something that I think we have all so quickly become familiar with, and some obviously more comfortable than others. But man, you look at the growth in text messaging. I read something in the last decade that text messaging has grown 7,000%, or the number of texts 7,000%. I mean, some crazy stat like that, which goes to show that we are all becoming more comfortable communicating in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we have this idea of conversational marketing, I think that's really just business reflecting what's happening in social. You know, folks have moved away from phone calls to text. It used to be a bit of a novelty. Now it's the really primary way that people communicate. And business is trying to catch up with that and reflect that and make it work for them.
There's a time, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are creeped out for one reason or another by it. And are they creeped out because they don't know who's on the other end? Are they creeped out because they're wondering if it's just a machine that they're talking to? You know?
I think that's very legitimate, right? And we also live in this world where you get called, you know, you get robo-dialed all the time. The phone call, which used to always be at least a person on the other side of the phone. Maybe that person was trying to sell you something, but usually someone that you know. And now we've changed to a point where there's, you know, machines calling you up constantly. And we almost expect that same thing when we look at a live chat. You know, when the chat pops up and it says, hey, I'm Evan, what can I help you with? We almost have that gut check experience where we say, that is probably not a real person named Evan.
Right.
That's probably some kind of machine. And then, yeah, it may be Evan on the other side of it, or more likely Evan is like kind of a conceptual technical services person. And it could be Cindy or Patrick on the back of it who's handling the chats for, you know, quote unquote, Evan.
It could be Jake from State Farm.
It could be Jake from State Farm.
I mean, we don't know, right?
Wearing his khakis.
That's right. But, you know, what's interesting about that, to me at least, is that when you do reach that point in that shopping or investigating process of whatever you're researching, occasionally you do reach that moment where it's like, oh, where's that chat thing? I actually want to ask it a question. And at that moment, I don't care that it's technology, because whatever it is might be able to answer my question.
Mm-hmm. And it'll do it in a quick way. And I think that's the value right
Exactly.
There, you know?
So in that moment, my desire to get that information fast supersedes any sort of creepy feeling that I had.
I think absolutely, yeah. It's the same reason that people like to text one another. You don't have to do the call it up, hey, how you doing? Doing fine. What can I help you with? Okay, this. You can just say, hey, where's this? And the expectation is that someone's going to reply to you. And I also think that the items that we're kind of discussing right now, which is how people feel uncomfortable when they think that it's not a real person on the other side of it, that's something that when you are implementing these strategies, you should absolutely keep in mind. If you're uncomfortable with it, then you should definitely be thinking about it if you were going to be implementing a chat on your website or via your services.
Meaning that you should, be empathetic to that experience, right? And say, how do we make it so it's more inviting and more and less?
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
And one of my biggest things, so I'm a consultant helping people implement these. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I always have is don't expect a robot to really handle this conversation too well. And we can maybe talk about that if we dig into it a little more here. But one of my biggest things is if you are going to be using the automated version of anything, first of all, tell them that right away. Hey, I'm an automated system. That's my number one best practice. And then have very low expectations for what that automated system can do. That tool should be transactional. That should effectively be like an order taker form. Here's the 3 or 4 things I can help you with. And then that interaction will probably go pretty well. But if you try to recreate a person with these tools, we're not there yet. Maybe 2 or 3 more years, we could do it effectively. But right now, you need to be really realistic with what you're doing.
All right. So we have a basic idea of what we're talking about. And I think we, by now, if you're still with us, you get the idea of what we're talking about and, asking questions on the website. So when you adapt that into and especially for our listeners in the club industry who so often will get phone calls or people visiting their website, what generally will happen, we've seen this across the board with the clubs that we've had conversations with and work with today, that clubs get a lot of direct traffic or referral traffic through search engines where, they heard of a club, a friend of theirs recommended it, whatever that is, and they'll just do a search for that club and they'll get to that website. Then generally what happens that we've noticed is that people are looking for specific information in some cases. Like people always want to know, what are the initiation fees? What are the dues? They want to also get a sense for whether the club looks like them. So visually, those sorts of things, are being considered when someone goes to visit a club site. Typically, when you think about this idea of conversational marketing in that context, what would that potentially look like for a club?
Yeah. So I think that is exactly where we see the value of using these kind of chat tools. It's answering kind of quick questions, helping people navigate and things like that. When I've worked in services industries in the past, like actually worked there, we almost constantly get these questions of, hey, when do you close? Yeah, 9 o'clock. Thanks, bye. And that's like you get like 5, 10 of those calls every day. And you imagine all the time you could save and what a good experience you could have if it really was just such a quick question like that is available on the site, but people aren't going to look on the site. They want you to answer it for them, and they're going to start calling you up. So there's a lot of value here in helping people navigate your existing resources. And you can do that more effectively through chat, and you can especially do that effectively through chat if you have good content on your site already. And that's what I was talking about when we said, conversational marketing. I think it starts before the chat, which is thinking about answering folks' questions. So you can do this in a couple ways. First of all, we almost always have really great content on our site. We definitely have something that lists the hours of operation. We certainly have something that addresses their questions about the initial fees. And we also have great galleries that show them the content that we have. Now, if we were doing that over the phone, we kind of run into this sort of awkward situation where we say, are you at your browser? Are you on our site? Okay, what are you looking at? Could you click over on this? And then do you see what I see right now? Could you click on this? Or even worse, you could say, yeah, go to my site and now hit /gallery -picture number. And whereas if you're using a chat tool, your people are very good at navigating the site. They know where everything is, and they can send them a link on the spot to say, oh, you're wondering about our hours of operation. Here's the page. Here's the link right here. I'm going to send you directly to it. And it's going to say a lot more effectively and in a way that you can continually reference the information which someone is looking for. So it's a great way to encourage people to really engage with what is already the existing content that you already have.
Mm-hmm. And, which that's a great perspective of that. And so often people in, membership directors for clubs, or marketing and communications people, if it's a club that has those roles, is they're all strapped for time. We're all strapped for time. And the one thing you don't want to do in your job is spend a lot of time on an unqualified prospect. And so what ends up happening a lot of times for membership directors is someone might pick up the phone and call, or and the close is come in for a tour. Like some clubs will provide initiation fee information over the phone, monthly dues and things like that. But what every membership director is trying to do is to get that prospect to come into the club, which is fine because most people will say, I've got a really high close rate when they get to the club. And yet there are also people like me, for example, who before I joined the club we belonged to, I kicked the tires for 5 years, kept looking for a deal, and then going back to my same 3 clubs every year to see if there was an opportunity to join. But, and I'm sure I wasted a lot of people's time. I know for a fact that I did.
Yeah.
And that's not cool for a membership director who's juggling 10 other things, So this type of, conversational marketing can be really helpful for those people who are trying to juggle other balls and maybe spend time with more qualified prospects.
Yeah, and I think some things, so if you look at that example, you have someone that has an incredibly valuable interaction at the point of decision, right? So once they get there and they're speaking to them in person, they're going to be able to probably have that person make the decision. You've actually looked at the club. You have talked to me about fees. You've met me. You've met some of the members at this point. And now you're either going to sign up or you're going to decide not to sign up, but you have the information you really need at that point. We likely don't need many more interactions after that. So if we can take someone like that and maximize those interactions that they have, the really high value ones, and minimize the administrative things and the transactional things which they need to do on the front end to make that happen, we can really maximize our most valuable people's time. So if I was to look at that example, some things where I'm thinking, okay, conversational marketing in here. I wonder if we wouldn't like to maybe qualify people on the front end. And that simple task, it's really a form, could be a great use for a chatbot.
So what would that look like?
So a chatbot, you can do a lot with it. You can actually recreate a conversation, but to me, I think that's very risky. I really don't encourage folks to do it. But here's where I see a chatbot as very valuable. You don't necessarily want to fill out a big long form that says, yeah, here's where I've been before, here's my budget, here's all these things. When you hit someone with a big form like that, they often are intimidated. But that conversation actually goes much more sleekly when you do it through a chatbot. So the chatbot can say, hey, what's your name? Oh, great. What are you interested in? Is it A, B, C, or D? Oh, it's D. You're interested in becoming a member. Have you considered this thing, or could you please answer this question for me? Great. I've just qualified you on the spot. And then with a lot of these technologies, certainly HubSpot's one of them, many of the chat tools have it, we could actually go as far as to have the chatbot say, hey, you answered question A, B, and C the way that we like you to. You gave us the right answers there. So now I'm going to present you with a meeting booking tool. You give these tools access to your calendar, and it will offer up those opportunities to meet with the person who can actually close this business and say, yeah, we're going to schedule a tour for you, half an hour tour. Here are the times, and the chatbot will handle that. So your person who's actually incredibly valuable is only really spending their time on these tours. They don't have to spend the time looking at calendars, spending the back and forth on, oh, does this time work? Does that time work? Or even having the conversations with the people that aren't qualified. So we do a lot of that administrative task.
Right. And studies will show that when people select as someone who's trying to book time, when they select a date and time that they want to come in, the likelihood of them coming in is higher than if you say, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? Because they've opted in and they've said, this is when I can come. And the likelihood of them showing up is generally higher.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So let's just talk through that again. So, because there's some, I just want to I've known you for years, so I understand the way you're describing this, and I just want to make sure that our listeners see this as well. So there are certain frequently asked questions that all businesses have, right? And that are pretty predictable when people visit either visit your website or whatever, right? I mean, that's kind of what the idea of chatbot is predicated on. We're going to anticipate certain questions that you always get.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's what you do. You start off if you are going to be using a chatbot, usually the first question, you'll grab their name, you might grab their email address, and then you're going to usually present them with some options. It can be in the form of a question, or more likely than not, that question is very simple, which is, can I help you with one of these 4 things? And you just make it nice and straightforward for people.
Got it. Now, could they also have it say, like, what can I help you with? Knowing that people are going to, it's going to be a wedding, it's going to be a membership, it's going to be hosting my golf event, or, there are probably going to be 4 things that people are going to fill out anyway. And if it's something else, are chatbots smart enough to know, like, oh, he wrote golf event, and that's close to golf outing, so we're going to route that this way? Okay.
You can do it. Those are the spots where I'm taking this all with a little caution, because you can absolutely do that. Any of these chat tools are going to do that effectively. HubSpot does it very effectively. But it requires you to really have pretty clear expectations on what the conversation is going to go like. So you could say, what can I help you with? And then, yes, if they type in the word, it could be a sentence that contains the word wedding, or could contain a tour, these commonly asked questions. And then the bot could respond, oh, I saw the word wedding, here's my next step. I get scared of those, though.
Right. Minimize the opportunity where you could screw it up, because as soon as it feels like you're talking to a robot, or where it actually becomes more of a headache for that person than it is a help, right?
I don't like having the robot pretend to be a person. I just think it's a liability, and if you mess it up, you're going to frustrate people. So to me, I always advocate on simplifying those. You can do it, and I think there's space to do that, and you can do it effectively. But my go-to is always, hey, I'm a chatbot. Let's be clear right away. I'm not going to pretend to be a person. I never advocate that. And then here are you give them the menu. Here are the 4 things I can help you with. And that's a different way to go about it, and it's always where I start. I just feel safe like that. It feels honest. It feels straightforward. And I think you really do end up with about just as good of an interaction.
Right. So again, we use the term, Evan and I are saying, like, chatbot and things like that. But as a club, maybe it's your online concierge. It could be, pick any phrase of what you want to call it. Just that I think your point is just be clear of what it is, and don't try to make people say, hey, it's Ed here, and when it's really not Ed. Now, if it is Ed, then that's different. But right.
That's where I think honestly, it's great technology, and we're all going to be implementing this. But the next, especially these few years, we're on the cutting edge of this stuff. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to do this stuff wrong. And so let's keep having these conversations. Let's make sure we are the ones doing it right. Because it's easy to do it right, but there's a lot of possibility to do it wrong.
So a couple of things, right, just to recap where we are. I mean, number one, the big one of the things that this technology can help with is just efficiency and helping people to better, make better use of their time, so they're not spending time on prospects that are not qualified. Getting when you do get a good prospect, that you're actually getting a prospect that it has been qualified to some degree, or at a greater degree than otherwise might occur.
And I would say on top of that you're also giving them a good experience. There's something to be said about you can come in earlier than someone else with a product or service. You can come in cheaper than someone else with a product or service, or you can deliver a better experience. And I think more and more, as we see these companies that do well, it's about delivering a better experience. And for many of us, chat is part of that better experience. We want it. We feel uncomfortable getting on the phone with people. We'd rather chat. And we just expect to see it. We want it. So I think more and more it's part of that great experience.
You know what? And especially as it relates to investigating clubs and things like that, a lot of times I know the resistance is that people are saying, I don't have time to come in to tour your club before I get your initiation fees. Or we'll have clubs who will say that, well, we'll just give that when people call. They won't. There won't. So why not? When you offer that information right off the bat, potentially through conversational marketing or something like that, you are giving that prospect a better experience because you're not making them do something and work to try to get information that you already give out quite readily.
Yeah. Yes.
You're just
it's so true.
Right. It's tradition that's made you do that rather than really what's in the best interest for that prospect or what they hope to get. Right.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's best to just give them the darn answer. You look at a lot of our people, people like me. I think I'm maybe the prospect that a lot of clubs would get nowadays. And I'm going to look at a list. I'm going to have a short list in my head, the ones that I've been to with my friends and that I've been around to. And I'm going to say, okay, it's decision time. I'm going to pull the trigger on this. Let me get the information I need. And if I cannot find the information I need easily, I'm just going to move on to the next thing on my list.
Right. Yeah. So it really so one of the things that a lot of clubs and people that we have conversations with struggle with is the idea of it's just cold. It seems impersonal. I'm not going to have a chatbot talk to people. We're all about engagement, community, and building relationships and things like that. How do you it's hard to deny that a chatbot isn't somewhat cold, right? But at that point, I guess what I'm wondering, is that the biggest concern? I mean, I don't want to downplay the importance of having that.
No, that should absolutely be your concern. Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing, though. We're talking about two different things, and I think we're having a great conversation about some of the best ways to handle this stuff, which there is this functionality in these tools where when you pull up the chat, bottom right, the little AIM, the text message tool comes up, and you're either going to be talking to a real person who maybe has nothing to do with that company, is in a call center somewhere, or a robot. And the things that I think you're going to want to do well is that if you are going to utilize these bot tools, which absolutely have their place, again, you keep hearing me hit this note, which is be straightforward about it and keep it very simple. That should be thought of as like a search tool or a meeting booking tool or a quick answer tool. And you should be very honest. Hey, I'm a bot. Here's the 4 things I can do. I can help you find our documentation. I can help you book a meeting with this person, or I can answer these 5 questions. From there, if you are going to implement chat, and we're talking about chat now where it's a real person, you want this to be someone at your club. You probably want it to be the person who usually just goes ahead and answers the phone. And you can make this very easy for them. So they're looking, on their desktop with right next to their email. They have a little chat tool that pops up, and it's someone that says, hi. And I'll tell you what, I know this from HubSpot because we use a ton of chat, and we use more and more chat every day. The first question they will get is, are you a real person? It's what everybody types into the chat right away. And they say, hey, it's Evan, I'm from HubSpot. And then the first thing they go, okay, Evan, are you a real person? And then you say, yeah. And then you say, yes, I am. And they say, okay, what's your favorite fruit? And you're like, okay, I like apples. And they're like, okay, I believe you now. You're a real person.
Right.
And
boy, that was tough.
And I think what you're saying is this idea that you're not talking to someone, you don't hear the inflection of their voice. You don't necessarily, do that rapport building with them on the front end. You need to make up for that, and you need to have what is an engaging and fun and human conversation. So HubSpot does it. We do it really well. When you call in, yes, they will tell you what their favorite fruit is. They will give you their take on the Game of Thrones finale, or they'll answer your question with normal conversation. You might see them correct a typo. You'll see them use a smiley face. They'll type out laughter. They will they'll ping you back with a question, or even better, anticipate what your next question is going to be, which is what a great services operative does. So as long as you can get the right people in here, set them up for success with the right tools, I think there's a ton of opportunity to have a very engaging human conversation.
Okay, that's awesome. And still some people will be uncomfortable with that, and that's fine too, right? I mean, because it's not for everyone. You've got to have the right culture, the right club, the right leadership to really go along with this idea. The other thing that I wanted to just explore with you as well is how it can enhance your existing sales process and how you potentially follow up and stay in touch and, as we would say, nurture those contacts over time. What are your thoughts on that? Like how it enhances the sales process? We talked a little bit about getting a more qualified lead and things like that. But what are your thoughts around those two aspects of chat?
Yeah, so a lot to say there actually. The first thing I might say is there are people on your website, you don't know who they are until they pick up the phone or send you an email. And now you have this third option, which for a lot of people is the only option they will take. So if the only option was to call you, especially if the only option was to call you to get information, you're going to be cutting out some people. Who's to say what percentage of it is, but there's a lot of people who don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to have a conversation with you. So if you have chat as an option, you are getting those people. So first and foremost, you are having more conversations with folks. You are talking to more leads, some of which you would never have talked to because they don't want to get on the phone and talk to someone, especially if they think they're going to talk to someone who's like a salesperson and is going to sell them. They just want to have a conversation. They don't want to get sold. Now, with that in mind, you're instantly getting kind of feedback. So when you realize that people are constantly asking you for your schedule, you might think, okay, well, maybe the schedule should be more available on the homepage. Or heck, our schedule page really doesn't look so good. People keep asking me for it in chat. I'm going to actually improve my digital experience. I'm going to improve my website based on what's happening on chat. Then from there, you have these great tools which you can leverage. The meeting booking tool, I think, is one of the most powerful. And that's where you're really starting to get it with the salespeople. So you could have a person or a chat bot, as long as we're clear about what that tool's function is, actually go ahead and send them a meeting booking link right on the spot. Either the real person, Evan's actually going to say, oh, I answered your questions. Did you want to schedule a tour? And here's the meeting booking link for the person who handles the tour. Or you can even set those up as team availability to schedule another call. So right there, those in-person conversations, whether that's an in-person meeting or a phone call, you're using these tools to get those meetings to actually happen. Now, from there, when we're talking about conversational marketing, I think I had to throw on my HubSpot hat for a second here and talk about how we handle this stuff.
The big H.
Yeah, the big H is in town. Our conversations tools are available for free across the platform. So you can put chat on your site if you have any version of HubSpot, including the free version. But the tool really becomes empowered when you have some of our other tools. So if you have the HubSpot sales tool, that's when you can do these meeting bookings. If you have our services tool, you can have a chat that actually serves up your knowledge-based articles, your question and answer documentation. You can create tickets and actually have somebody follow up. So if there was something that was maybe, a complaint or a service request or something that they needed to improve, you could create a ticket for them in your system and have your team manage that in a nice, streamlined way and make sure that it gets followed up on correctly.
So the appropriate person in the right
sales.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. But the appropriate person in the right
sales,
department addresses that complaint potentially.
But man, you get your sales because of a great customer service experience more and more. So you don't want to have a complaint. You'd love to not have a complaint, but it's much worse to not hear a complaint.
For sure.
If people don't feel like they're being heard or it's not followed up on, man, people are going to tell 10 friends when they're disappointed and one friend when they're happy. So you really want to turn that frown upside down.
And think about the if you're thinking, well, geez, how does that apply to membership? It might, but it also could apply to if you are a club that hosts weddings, outside weddings, or non-member weddings or sponsored weddings. That's really, really valuable. You want to give those people an opportunity because you'd rather have them share their displeasure or their concern with you than to go on Google reviews and rip you out.
Oh,
there,
yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, and I think for clubs and stuff, there's still great opportunities to follow up on tickets. I was recently looking at a service industry's Yelp review, and I saw it twice where they said no soap in the bathroom. I'm like, well, that's gross. That's gross. And it was 1-star review. And you imagine that maybe they ended up giving that review because they felt that there was no place else for them to go. And if instead they had hopped on a chat and someone said, hey, there's no soap in the bathroom, he said, oh, I'm so sorry, we're going to fix that for you right away. And then someone creates a ticket for the facilities team to go and handle that, and it gets handled in a well-managed, trackable way. That's customer service. That's really giving
cool.
people a good experience with your organization.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hey, let's just to go back to the sales component. I in one of our upcoming podcasts with a sales trainer who specializes in the hospitality industry. We were doing a pre-production call about a week ago or so, and we were talking about response time from sales teams. Okay, and this fits right into conversational marketing. Anyway, her point was if you have someone on your website who's interested in information, they are interested at that time. Now, if you don't have something like chat or conversational marketing, things we're talking about, conversational capabilities, if someone fills out a form or sends you an email and says, hey, I'm interested in having my event, I'm interested in membership, whatever that is, what her research has found is that if you can respond to them immediately and ask them and try to secure a discussion with them for either later that day or the following day, that person, if you can get to them right away, that person has a 90% likelihood of them responding to your communication. And as we were talking through that, it's because, why all this stuff around chat, in my opinion, I'd love your take on this, but it's because when we want information, we want it now. We're all really, really busy. And if you think about this whole idea of chat in a way, it's like, I'm on your website right this second, and I have an opportunity to talk to you, and you have an opportunity to talk to me. Why would you not be there ready to talk to them? Because that's when it's convenient for them. And it may not be convenient tomorrow when it's convenient for you.
Oh, yeah. So I think a few things there that you're thinking about. So I keep hitting it up. I'm a services person, right? I'm a consultant. I help people who have our products use it better. So you can see that my mind often goes to those examples. But of course, on the front end, there's salespeople who get mapped into these discussions. And at HubSpot, where I work, it's actually usually people in a salesperson's role who are manning those chat, or they might be like a starting out salesperson. They are the first line of defense there. So either you're going to have your services person answering the chat, and the second the conversation is identified as being sales ready, they'll transfer it over to a services person. So we think about these as one-to-one conversations. Hey, I'm talking to Evan. But you can very quickly say, hey, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Ed. Now here's Ed. And the chat will update. It'll show that you're now talking to Ed. And you are instantly having that conversation with a salesperson. So you can very quickly transition these tools to say, yep, sales ready. Let's get them on with that person. And they're having it. And from there, if someone said, let's book a meeting, or I'd rather talk to you on the phone, all that's right in front of them. They can leverage these meeting booking tools, or of course, they just give somebody a call.
Yeah. So, Evan, for people who are intrigued, at least with the conversation and what it possibly could be, we know HubSpot offers chat capabilities. What are some other software platforms for this technology that are available that people could research?
Yeah, absolutely. So HubSpot has chat. It's available for free. You don't have to have any of the other HubSpot products to use that. And you can use it alongside HubSpot's free CRM as well.
Wow.
One of my favorite tools, there's a lot of really powerful free stuff out there. We give it to you for free, and we hope that you really like our products. The other big one I'd say is a huge player in the chat space, who we have a partnership with as well, is team over at Drift. They do chat very well, I think. I talked about how HubSpot is this all-in-one platform, and there's a ton of value in using our chat with our other tools. Drift just does chat. So I think they do it incredibly well. If you were only looking for chat and you didn't want other tools, I would say you should definitely be checking out what they're up to.
Yeah. So, and that's drift.com. Yeah. Okay. And then anyone else, any other players worth checking out?
Yeah. I mean, you see chat that's integrated into actual like website building tools as well. So you're going to see players in the space like Squarespace and WordPress and these other website building tools who are actually going to have native chat built in as well.
Awesome.
Something to check out.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, just final thoughts around this whole, this technology and where it is. Where do you think it's all going? It's like certain things, we're not going to stuff the genie back in the bottle. And this to me feels like something that as we, whether you like it or not, I mean, it's the way that people are communicating more and more, and especially for people who follow this podcast, that are really focused on that next generation member. What do you think? How will this evolve? How is this going to play out, do you think? I mean, if you had a crystal ball, what would be your opinion?
Well, I think some of it's pretty obvious to me, which is that chat is not going away. Chat on a website really at this point in time has become an expectation. And for younger and younger generations, if they don't see it on your site, they're wondering what is broken about your site and why this isn't available. So it's happening. We want to think about how we want to do it and how we want to do it smart, make it look good and be unobtrusive. And then I think the other side of it is, I've said a lot about bots and how I think we need to be really careful. And I honestly think that in the next few years, we're going to be the generation who are making some really ugly bots out there. I hope it's not me, and I hope it's nobody I work with. I'll try to steer them right. But it's going to be happening. The thing is, though, it's not going to be the case for long. AI, machine learning, conversation, these tools are better understanding human language and how we interact. So there is going to be a point where having a bot that's available 24/7, that does this at scale and can actually answer questions, give them the right answers, and serve up resources, that's happening. And it's only a couple of years away. So I think we want to be the organizations that are doing this stuff and doing it really well for how we're doing it now so that we can be ready to do it really well how we're going to be doing it 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm. And where you sit at HubSpot, it's obviously as leaders in this space and leaders in online marketing. So I appreciate your forward thinking in so many of not just this topic and other topics as well, but and hopefully our listeners have been able to benefit from this as well. Evan, thanks so much for your time. It's been awesome to hear your perspective on this stuff.
Yeah, Ed, always great catching up with you. And thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
And thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to Crushing Club Marketing wherever you get your podcasts. Until we meet again, keep crushing your club's marketing.